All right.
The Beaufort County Board of Education agenda meeting for September 24, 2019 is now called to order. Do we have approval for the agenda, Mr. Smith?
Yes, we have approval for the agenda.
Okay, and I'll second it. Any discussion? No, okay. So we'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We have our flag back there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So we have, the media's been properly notified. We don't have anybody from the public attending. Attending the agenda setting meeting, Mr. Smith, Dr. Guads, Dr. Rodriguez, Robin Cushionberry, and Earl Campbell and Tricia Fidrich. So the next thing is take a look at the minutes, Will, and read through those.
At the last meeting, I thought we had adjourned and then we started talking.
You were on the phone. You adjourned early because you were on the phone.
Okay.
You participated in
You're
that
right,
meeting.
you're right.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
You're right. Okay, that's fine.
You good?
That's
All right,
fine.
so you make the motion and I'll second it. Or did we already do that? Okay, go ahead.
Huh?
You want to move to approve the minutes?
Oh yeah, I moved to approve that. We approved.
Okay, and I second it. Any further discussion? Okay. Approved. Next is the agenda setting for October 1.
Also, what I included in your packet is the future agenda topics that
Okay.
came from out of the September 17th meeting. Some of those items we were kind of already assigned to, so I just wanted you to see where they were assigned to, and then
Perfect,
what,
okay.
where are we gonna move the rest?
Yep,
And it was just kind of a way to try to help us keep up with wherever we're moving up.
okay. So, and then from last night, I think there was only two, well, at the end, there was only two agenda requests. The Fusky Island Schools, but that was really a visit.
Right.
And then there was also the legislative delegation.
Yeah, and that was already on there.
That was already on there. And then the other one was what Mr. Dowling had asked for, was
Security.
school safety.
And I already put that on,
School security.
I put this on
So-
October agenda.
On school safety
Yeah.
and school security. I know he wants a completely public conversation about it. However, I mean, when you look at our own ARs, when you look at South Carolina legislature, right, it reads, information relating to security plans, right? And devices proposed, adopted, installed, or utilized by the public body other than amounts expended for adoption, implementation, or installation of these plans and devices is required to be closed to the public and is not considered to be made open to the public under the provisions of the FOIA Act. Our own AR says the BCSD shall not disclose any information related to security plans, or it uses the same language all the way through to the public, right? So if we're talking about SROs, and we're talking about distribution of SROs, we're talking about the SROs at elementary schools or anything like that, or a security firm or whatever it is we're going to look at, That's security plan.
Well, SROs, those are public because if you just talking about placing those officers, I don't think that will be I don't think that will be protected under that because you're not saying what the SRO is doing. What you're saying is that you're talking about putting the SRO in that building and you're talking about using public funds. You're not saying this is a strategic. I think as a strategic plan. If this happens, then this should be done. I think those are things that are covered. But if not, then I would like to have that further looked at. But I would definitely appreciate if you would email both of those documents to the board so that you can let to Mr. Dollar so that you can let us know exactly where you're coming from.
But I think you could argue that saying that we're going to put SROs in elementary schools, we're telling the public and we're telling anybody out there that we don't have them.
That's exactly it.
And between now and the implementation of those SROs, I believe the sheriff at a prior meeting came here and shared with everybody that it would take about 2 years to do that. So between now and 2 years, we're verbally stating out there to people that we don't have them. I don't know. I mean, I just want to put that out here because, I mean, what are the types of questions that the board is going to have that they're going to want to talk about with respect to this that doesn't either eventually get into whatever security plan we have or whether we're adding people or whether, you know what I'm saying?
Well, now for the most part, I do agree and I do caution the board about talking to security plans, but such as an officer being in the school, so people can ride by them, they don't see the officer car, that's common sense. So that stuff right there, we're not putting in schools in it. And also you have parents out there who've come in who are calling us and are saying, hey, look, we want SROs in certain schools. So that's the surface conversation. Now anything in particularly to start getting into the plan A, plan B, plan C, those things, then no, I will object and say no, those need to be behind closed doors. But the basics part of having SROs in schools, the same thing as having SROs in the board meetings, that's the same. Those are the same. Those are along the same basic topic of information.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I don't see where that's part of it. But anything going into any plan or to implementing anything or talking about doors of security, then that I can see those being behind doors. But that part, because you have a lot of concerned parents out there, and you just have the parents that we're talking about. Now they need to see and know that we're working on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's an uncomfortable part of the job. That's just my perspective.
Okay, so I think though that, I think what, I see what, I definitely see it the way you see it. And that, to me, that's part of the plan, because the CROs, SROs are part of our security, whatever you want to say, security
Program.
That's a good word. So if it's, unfortunately, there's a lot of people, or there's some people out there who would like to know, where they are and all that sort of thing, because they have, the idea of doing something not so good. So, I think it sounded to me like from John's comments last night, he wants public discussion. So to me, the only thing it seems like you could really discuss in public would be the cost.
Yes, that we
And
could
that's-
totally do.
Right,
Totally.
but,
So we could say, this is what the startup cost is for an SRO. This is what the cost is after the startup year for an SRO. This is what the cost is if we're looking to hire a security firm, right, or something like that. So we could talk about that,
it seemed to me he didn't want at all an executive discussion. But I think there are other board members who probably would like an executive discussion, such as Dr. Wisniewski.
And I have also stated that I would like for it, and I've also, even when I was on the board, I said some of that stuff that y'all talking about need to be behind closed doors. But once again, we need to assure the people out there who elected us that we're doing their business and that we are concerned about their kids. So we can go back and say, oh, we're talking about them all day, but every time we come out, we don't have any results.
Mm-hmm.
So it is my job to assure parents out there that we are talking about it. And once they see that, you know, then that's a different, but as parts of what we, like I said, the plans and where they're going, that stuff that can happen here. But some of that stuff, it's not a problem with that happening, because at some point in time, you have to take action on it too.
Sure, no problem with taking action. I think the issue that I see, here's the thing, right? God forbid, somebody did something in a school
Right,
and harmed kids,
right,
okay?
right,
At the end of the day,
right.
I don't wanna have to answer questions about if that individual learned that maybe the security at a particular school wasn't really at this level,
Right.
or we didn't have
Right.
either a particular officer at a particular school, and they took advantage of that information to come and do something at a school. I don't think any of us wanna be in a situation where we have to respond to that
Right.
later. I'm not saying we shouldn't have a conversation and then act on a conversation. I'm just simply saying that I don't want to
Give them too much
to
information.
provide something out there that gives somebody who's may not be thinking clearly for whatever reason about a place where they could go, which might be an easier target than another target. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's all I'm trying to bring up here. That is the concern I have.
No, I agree with you.
You know?
So do we want an executive session,
Well,
or
that's
as
what
part
we-
of it, and part of it open
But
session?
why don't, can I make a suggestion? Why don't we let the administration, and along with Mr. Grissom, come up with what it's gonna cost for a private firm, or what it's gonna cost from the sheriff? Because you gotta look at, you gotta pay for the cars, you gotta pay their salary, really everything that goes in there. So,
Right, but
bring the board, what it's gonna cost for those, for a deputy.
Mhm.
And then we go from there.
And so then would you see the rest of the discussion in executive session at the next meeting?
Yes.
Because it would be
Yeah.
typically, public would be after all.
Yeah, after
I
that,
mean,
then,
I mean,
And I
there
guess
are
the other
some
thing-
there are some other conversation pieces that, I know that just the conversation, okay, about what the cost is, one way or another, isn't gonna satisfy the appetite of the board. It's just that the rest of the appetite of the board, to satisfy the rest of the appetite of the board and all of us about this conversation and discussion, some of that stuff, if you start talking about proactive measures, right, that's plans.
yes, no,
Right.
that I would agree
That's
to.
plans, right?
That is, I
And
agree.
that kind
I
of
agree.
stuff.
Can't happen.
So even talking about like what it costs to have an officer at a school or whatever, you've also got to you've got to be somewhat generic, like I guess you'd say,
The
to
co-
put.
Just
to put
talk
it-
about the cost of an officer, not
Yeah,
talk about where.
no, don't say where, which
Right.
school, how many schools, you can't, because that's, once again, you're getting into a plan, I
Mhm.
think. I'm curious, Patricia, what do you think?
Thinking back when we placed that security firm at Buford L, because the shootings that
Yes.
were right in the neighborhood, because we couldn't get an SRO,
Right.
we did that in executive session, right? So I agree with Will. I think there's gotta definitely be a conversation out in open public. But hey, if part of a plan is where you place them, and plans are protected, then I say that's done in executive session. Yeah, but I agree with you. I think that there has to be, because it's out there.
Oh, yeah.
It's out there. I mean, the community knows elementary schools don't have SROs.
It is.
I mean, it's out there. It's been talked about for how many years?
And we even had one board meeting where we allowed where the security chief of security allowed this firm to come out and tell where all our weaknesses were on at a public meeting, and that was horrible. So I mean that didn't happen. So I mean, if they really want something, they'll just go back to that meeting and find out which meeting that was.
But there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
You know, so,
Yeah.
but I agree with you. I think just the idea, it has to be addressed, the safety and security.
Right.
But whatever you say is part of the plan, like Mr. Campbell said, that's how I see it. You and Mr. Grissom or whomever, Chief Clancy, whomever it is, come up with the plan. And that stays private. I mean, that's,
So what do you feel that the administration could have prepared? We've got, obviously just a few days before the documents are required in the board docs.
Yeah, and I know last night when the board was asking me the question about being prepared for the next board meeting, I was thinking 2-week window.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
And because that was really a special meeting call,
Yeah.
that I'm really down to 2 days,
Right,
But
that's exactly right.
But, so, I mean, I think we're gonna talk about,
I think,
there is some general things out there from the DOE about school safety and school security conversation piece that we can talk about, because it's out there, right, so those are things that are easy to talk about. We can talk about some of the foundational things that we do in schools with respect to safety and security and that kind of thing that are, it's not really necessarily a secret thing, with respect to, like, for example, drills and frequency of drills and that kind of stuff that we do. I think those are things we could talk about. When you start getting into, my thought was to build a conversation from what does our statute say about safety and security with schools, right? To what are the foundational things that we do, to what are the more aggressive things that we do with respect to what's the cost of SROs, what's the cost of, okay? And build a conversation like that. In generality around the cost of what SROs and security firms, so the board understands what that is with respect to those types of options.
Yeah.
Okay. I have, for example, just today I had a meeting with Chief Clancy. Okay. I've got in the process of scheduling a meeting with Chief Clancy, with Sheriff Tanner, with our chiefs, right?
Beach, yeah.
And Beach, and with Chapman, okay? To have security conversations, that's proactive work,
Right.
okay? But nobody's getting anything out of me making a statement that I have a meeting that we're scheduling, or that I have scheduled, or whatever, with these people.
I think that would be good to tell people.
Yeah, I do too, but I'm
Right.
saying, no,
No,
I mean,
but you're not gonna give
what I'm
details.
saying is,
Secrets.
right, what I'm saying is I'm not revealing anything
No,
in
that
the
you're
process
meeting
of
with
that,
so-and-so,
but I am letting the
so-and-so,
community
so-and-so.
know
Yeah.
that we are taking proactive steps as we partner and work with our law
Yeah,
enforcement
I think that's
community.
good.
You see what I'm saying? Okay, so those are part of the general presentation conversation items that I think we can have out there. That show, number one, there are some things we do proactively to help as we respond to things like drills and things like that we have in terms of conversations about our work and our ongoing plans and collaboration with law enforcement, without getting into the details of what that is, right? And then some of the things that would be reserved for an internal conversation, I think, would be around maybe how many,
Yeah,
How
exactly.
many where, how many where.
right?
So so we got this under your superintendent's report, so I think it should be school safety, I don't think it should be safety plan, because our plan is
Yeah.
not public.
Right.
To me, that sounds good, that sounds reasonable for what is, you can prepare in the next 2 days. And then I think we should have probably the next meeting on the 15th, have and maybe an executive session discussion with more plan on the part of you and Mr. Grissom, et cetera, because that would give you more time to have met with some of these law enforcement officials, et cetera. And you could tell us in executive session, we need X number of SROs.
Not only that, I mean, there's some conversation, I understand, amongst, for example, an email that you got from one board member with respect to an item on the agenda, okay? That topic I started dealing with, immediately to have a response for, and I've gotten to a really good place around that with,
And which email is that?
with the sheriff. This was a particular board member requesting a conversation at last night's meeting after the agenda was already set with respect to a particular location, school board location, or program, I should say, okay? But there are actions that we're taking, have taken, and I think we're gonna have a really positive result, and I think it's grounded in the collaboration that we have, and that I think provides,
So you'll probably be questions about that. Are you gonna give details on that in public, or would
Well,
you say we gotta wait until
that
the
particular
executive
item is
session?
specific, right? And I
Yeah.
think that particular item would be an executive
Executive
session
session.
item.
Which I think then goes back to Mr. Smith's point, it's important that we see those documents, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
I
that it-
agree.
where it really says right
This
in
here.
there, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that's your fallback,
Yeah.
right? That's your fallback to say.
And not alone that, I think that we need to talk about this in executive session, prior to going out there to make sure that everyone see the document, everyone understands it, and see, with the full body, their understanding of those documents. So that everyone's on
But
the
those are
same
public,
page.
but those documents are public.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, those,
Yeah.
those
So-
public, yeah. So just making sure that everyone's educated and they know prior to leaving out here, when we do have any of those conversations, that there are boundaries. And that, hey, as board members, we might not want to cross the boundaries, we might not want to put each other in these boundaries. And start asking this question, then the question's head, I can't answer that.
But I'm sorry, I interrupted you, and I
No, you're fine.
apologize. But I guess what I was thinking, aren't there just certain things you can do in executive session? And if it's a public document, are you allowed to just, because the public, it might be helpful for them to hear that conversation, so that every time Dr. Rodriguez says that's part of a plan, they
You're right.
know, they know that
That's no
is,
problem. We can do that too, that's fine. That's fine.
because, well, why aren't you answering, remember, there's this I don't know, it just.
Yeah, maybe.
That could be slide one,
Sure,
Right,
Right.
exactly. 1 and 2.
right,
Yeah. So that-
Um,
That sounds good. So,
So are we gonna have an executive session on the first?
oh, wait a sec, we've jumped all the way down to here.
So
I
we
know.
need to start.
I know, but since we started on this topic, I just think we should have, as I already mentioned, school safety only
Right.
public session for this meeting. You don't have, I think it's unreasonable to think that you can come up with a comprehensive recommendation, let's say that, regarding a plan in executive session. All right, so let's go back to the talk.
But that specific item that you were talking about that could be, is that specific location, or you want to talk about that in executive session? That's,
Are we talking about?
Does that go to Will's point, that just to have that brief conversation?
I'm lost, y'all talking so
What
around,
you're talking about,
yeah.
choices? Or
Yes.
choices?
Yes.
That's what, yeah.
yeah, that's pretty good.
So do you wanna have that in executive session? Or do you?
Well, I mean,
that would.
Because that would have to be an executive
Specific
session.
to
that would need to come to executive session.
I'm happy to talk about it, I'm happy to share what I've done, I'm happy to
Yeah.
share the circumstance.
And I think this is one time
That's
that
a
we
good time.
that we do know
And that's
what's
not
going on
something
with
you
that.
have to prepare
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
No.
All right, so let's,
Yeah.
so.
That might on the
Somebody
waters.
requested
Now-
that.
yeah,
I think it was you. It was Kathy.
Oh, it was.
Somebody made a statement.
I did.
It was you, and an email, right?
Right?
Yes. I just-
Because I had heard that the kids went to the hospital.
Yes,
those
that's right, that was
certificates.
it.
And then Kathy chimed in and said, well, what conversation do we have about it as far as?
Yeah, so I started that immediately,
Okay,
actually
That's how
before
that-
y'all's emails,
uh-huh.
right?
Yeah,
And,
that's great. And you
working
know,
through it, and it's,
we gotta.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
so
Is
for
that
executive session,
for
so we have right now employment matters regarding
It's hard to
personnel
talk about this.
ratification.
I'd rather just tell you.
I know. All right, the personnel ratification report, we also had a request for a personnel matter from a board member today. So,
So, here's a question.
We had a what now?
you're among the receivers of a personnel matter that is not the board's employee,
Right.
but is the superintendent's employee. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
okay.
I think that's where
That's the way I look at it.
That's where I was going, right?
Okay.
I mean, if it's a personal matter, you know, that's for me to address, manage, and handle, right? Is it an item for executive session, or for a discussion?
That's, he's the superintendent, he works, the person works, I saw the email.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the
I
board.
agree with that.
Yeah, that's what I would say
mean,
too, the person doesn't work for us.
That's right.
And who was the person?
You handle it.
No. Oh, I don't think that's for discussion, because we're
On camera?
Yeah.
on camera, remember? Alright, so so just leave it the way it is, employment matters, or a personnel ratification report, adult ed, homeschool report, and then we also need safety plan, do you wanna say? Or, we probably should have the word plan
Is
in
it use
there.
plan, then you
Yeah.
have that.
But it's, yeah, I think,
because it is a safety plan about a particular place,
Okay,
alright,
right?
so that's the, yeah,
all right. So it's 5 o'clock, enough time for all three of the,
oh, I think plenty.
okay. All right, I just,
Well, now, I disagree with Mr. Campbell on that.
What?
I disagree with you because we don't know what this person is talking about in particularly and what's going on. So that may need to be a board discussion.
That individual who sent that email, you know, I think in there or on a subsequent email, I think clarified what he's talking about. And I think the individual he's talking about, actually, I believe, sent an email or
Yes.
Yes.
correspondence to the board
Yes.
today,
Yes,
explaining
very
himself.
quickly.
Explaining himself
Yeah, have you
in that matter.
got that one too?
No,
I don't think the
Oh,
board,
you
we
haven't
should
no,
not,
I haven't.
I think you have it though somewhere.
Okay.
but we shouldn't be discussing that as a board. He's a superintendent.
Well, but no, Mr. Campbell, you wrong right there now. Because, no, yes, you are. Because the fact of the matter remains that everyone who works for him, he don't have the authority to fire. He brings them to us, and we fire them. When the lawsuit comes, it comes in our names. So therefore, as the board, as a sitting board, if we see something in someone that could be a threat or something that disturbs us, then we have the right to talk to him about that. So don't say that. Because that is a not true factual.
Mr. Smith,
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, I think the two of you have a different opinion.
Right.
I have, so I think you've got to respect his opinion, he respects yours, but, you
But there
know,
will be pushback.
Yeah,
There will be
yeah, there'll
pushback,
definitely be pushback, and,
because it's been a request to be on the agenda.
right.
So,
I mean, I think also you could do it, if you needed the board's input, you could come to the board and say, you know, here's the dilemma, because I'm sure you have far more information about this employee than the board does, far more. And so, you know, that would be another way, is to review that information along with what has gone around, I guess, you know, today to some degree, and see, do you think you're going to need the board's input for decision making?
just an update.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
even just an update to,
That's, he can, where are we at on this right here?
We're under executive session.
Okay, so we're done, so basically, in executive sessions, we have, we in executive session. Oh, okay, excuse me, so we have employee matter, personnel application report, and adult ed, homeschool report, Those are the only three things that we have for executive
Safety
session.
Safety plan.
On the safety plan. And we're starting at 5 o'clock.
So, we're a little confused about that exchange. I'm trying to sort out.
I think, you know, some board members have the opinion of Will, and I think some board members have the opinion of Earl. That would be my.
No, just that there was a specific agenda request. And so I just think that to not even address it, I'm just, you know, hey, this is my first agenda
No,
setting
that's
meeting,
fine.
so I know. You know, but to not even address it,
I mean, I don't see the problem, if everything is there to come in, that should be a 5 minute discussion.
Well,
If
if somebody,
everything is-
if the intent is for somebody to have a conversation and say, well, this is what I think about this, and this is what I think about what happened, and say that, that's one thing. If the intent is to say, you as superintendent have to do X, Y, and Z about
Yeah,
this,
that's what I'm.
that's a whole other conversation,
Right,
right,
right? And that's where I think it goes over the line, right?
Yeah.
Right.
well,
Of what
and
different responsibilities are.
and at that point in time, that's when the board will be there, and other board members can voice their opinion on whether they think, hey, look, as a board member, hey, you out of line, or hey, I don't think that's just within his purview, and that should suffice that. But to ignore it and not to, if someone brings that up, then I mean, it wasn't different if they want to come individually, but apparently they're not, this is not a situation that the board member's not hiding. Apparently this board member has seen this and this is an issue to him, so he's bringing it before the full board. And I think that's decent and in order, versus him going to that person and discussing it. He's saying, hey, look here, I want to discuss it with you, and I want to discuss it as a board member at an executive session. We shouldn't take that right from him, if that's what he says he wants to discuss it at. Now, maybe you can reach out to him and ask him, hey, do you mind stopping by and we have a private conversation about that? And if he wants to do that, then he can do that. But if he wants to discuss in the executive session with the full board, why not? As a board member, what do we have to lose? I mean, that's what he wants to discuss it as a board member. That's within his purview of his rights. So we have to be mindful of that too, putting our emotions into those decisions so that we will protect. At the end of the day, as a board member, if he wants to be heard, let him be heard. If you feel a certain way about it, then you can say it. If you feel a certain way about it, he said after that, we all move on, and that way no one was ignored and no one feels slighted, because the problem at hand was brought up and we dealt with it. That's I mean that's just quick. I find every time we take shortcuts, or we try to backdoor somebody, or we try to slight them, or we try to say, well, you know what, let's just do this. Then the board get chaotic, and everybody get pissed off and say, well, you know, they slighted me or they do that. So therefore, just stop it. Hey, look at, you got the floor, and everyone's listening. And now versus just you telling him you have a problem with it, then other board members are charming and say, okay, we think that's wrong. So now then it's not just about what you think, because now you have other people agreeing and being in line with what you say.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's something that we have to stop. And that's our problem. Excuse me.
I saw the email. Did they request to be on the agenda, or did they talk to Dr. Rodriguez?
I'll be
On
on
the
the
agenda.
On the agenda.
Well, and you know, let me say this, and you may disagree with me. Anytime you have an issue, a board member have an issue with a staff member, they talk to the superintendent. Period. Because that's his employee. And then if it's something really bad, the superintendent will inform us of it. But I don't think either a board should sit down and discuss anything else.
I think he actually,
I was just wondering, do we have a policy on this?
Is it-
I mean,
not-
surely this isn't the first time.
no, it would be under
Look at it.
duties of the
Right.
superintendent. It would not be
Right.
duties of the board. In fact, that's clearly stated.
Right.
I'm forgotten what policy it is,
Yeah.
but I know the policy
Okay.
pretty well at this
I
point.
mean, it's natural.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
That's the
think
way
so.
it is everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so would that not be the response? I mean,
That could be the response. I guess the other option is, from time to time, in the past year when Dr. Berg was here, he'd occasionally, you know,
Right.
kind of,
Bring
you
it
know,
up.
yeah, just sort of, you know, this is happening with this employee. He wouldn't necessarily say, you know, what's your decision or
Mhm.
whatever, he'd kind of just, you know, acknowledge it or
Yeah.
that he was, so maybe that's the best way.
Yeah.
Just so, you know, you're
Sure.
aware and, you know, but, yeah, now the other, yeah, I just don't think, you know, we hired you for your expertise and, yeah, exactly. So,
So we have safety plan and adding on a personnel matter.
right, so I think you need to put it under employment matters, and then you can put
Personal ratification and personnel matter.
And
But
personnel matter,
I'll
okay.
get the correct wording.
Okay, let's do that. All right, I still
Okay.
think, let's leave it at 1 hour. I don't think we can.
Oh,
go
no,
beyond
'cause-
that.
yeah.
Yeah, otherwise it fills the space. All
Right.
right, so let's see,
We
everything
have a
else.
student performance, and it's by Robert Smalls.
And you know what it is?
It's the song I just got. She
Okay.
just sent it to me.
So is it singing or instruments
singing,
or?
singing.
Singing, okay.
It is, the name is Robert Smalls, lead singer. They will be singing the original Robert Smalls 7 Habits song.
Very nice.
And that is that a point of celebration?
No, that's a student performance.
That's a student.
We don't have any points of celebration, and Kristen was asking
Well,
where we are with that.
so I do have a question on that. In the past, I know we've celebrated kids who have gotten perfect scores, perfect scores, I guess, on the state assessments. Okay. I have a thought of a way we could make it a process where we're not going on for an extended period of time. My thought is that we would just ask all the kids to come forward at one time, recognize them for, as a group, for what the accomplishment is. Then they go, I guess they go out to take a photo, right?
Yes.
And when they go out to take a photo, they'll be individually get whatever it is they get. So the moment in front of the board is just coming up, the recognition in terms of a statement of what the accomplishment is, right? And then they take their photo out, I guess outside, I don't know.
Yeah,
what
they
the-
have for the big group, this is
No.
90 students.
90 kids.
And
But-
it's not,
Yeah, but it depends on, go ahead, excuse me.
it's, Mr. Foster corrected me yesterday, it is not, quote, perfect score, unquote, it was something else, it's like the highest level, or it was not, which I was.
Yeah, but he told
surprised.
me, I agree, because he told me the same thing.
Did it? Yeah.
And then today he told me that it was.
Okay, well, all right, so that's okay.
This is for what, is he ready? Is this for?
I believe it's you ready.
Yeah, is he ready? So there's 90 students, so, I mean, if you think about, if you had every student come forward, shake their hand and
Oh,
clap,
right.
we'll be there 90 minutes.
Well, no, I agree with that, but I don't agree when there's a kid who just won state, and then there's a kid who got an award from the school, and those are two different awards that need to be,
Yeah.
take 2 or 3 minutes to acknowledge that kid, because that kid has worked hard, and that kid represents the county.
But I think as a group, I
Right.
agree with you, and I think as a group, if we bring the group up and we say why this group is here,
Oh, yeah, that's quick, that's
and
awesome, yeah, that's good, yeah.
and they get the recognition, and then,
Yeah, they have, yeah.
what
Because
do
they're
you-
gonna get it in their schools too.
they are,
eventually.
they are.
Especially
What are your
90
thoughts
kids, yeah.
about handling it that way?
Mhm.
I have no objections.
90 kids in
Yeah.
90
kids, but-
chambers down there, the.
I know, see, that's the thing, I mean, they're not even gonna fit in there.
Where?
90 kids won't come, I'm sure, 90 kids.
No, that's true.
That's true.
Maybe half will come, 45, but that's not even gonna fit in the room, do you think?
Where, at the library?
No, we're gonna be
We're
at
at
council
chamber?
chamber.
They'll come up, most of the parents or
Might
whatever,
be a good
they'll be
image, but
standing
they're really
outside.
packed.
And then they'll come up to the
Might be a
front,
really good
take a
image, but
picture,
they're
and then
really-
they go out and
Right
the
outside.
chamber is empty again. So,
So we've got
So
to be
it's-
out by
it's-
6. If we're gonna have
Yeah.
90
Oh.
kids or somewhere,
Half that.
I'm sure we're gonna be out by 6.
yeah, by 6.
So I would just think of, my recommendation would be to think how you're gonna introduce them. Are you gonna go 3rd grade, fourth grade, or no, just the names alphabetically?
Nope. I was
No,
just
just-
gonna bring the group up and say,
Not even say their name.
and say, these are our students, 3rd through whatever grade, who have achieved a perfect score, or whatever
Whatever it
score,
is.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
on SC Ready in the last, whatever year, right?
Yeah.
And, wanna congratulate them, and blah, blah, blah. And I know we're gonna have a picture opportunity out here with
Yeah, with
either a
that many
certificate
kids,
or whatever
that's a
else,
good
right?
idea.
So it's a quick statement about what it is,
That's
but it
Yeah.
It's a chance to,
So
And they'll get
there's-
the little and out there, if maybe Mr. Foster or somebody else from our staff could give it, because
Yep.
obviously if you or I did that, that's.
no, yeah,
Or
Yeah.
Bonnie, I'm sorry, I didn't mean Bonnie, oh, I meant
Yeah,
Mary.
Mary.
I meant
That's
Mary.
okay.
yes,
I really meant Mary.
we know.
We know.
All right.
How does that sound?
That sounds really
So
good.
the scores are not, everybody knows their scores now? So how does that
October
happen?
first, everybody's gonna know their score, and that's the meeting.
So.
It's released, right, it's,
So
so,
so they're being invited. Okay. Just,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
if we're uncomfortable with it, we could put it off.
No, I think it's fabulous.
2 weeks,
No.
but,
I just really didn't know that those scores will be available to the October 1st.
yeah, I mean, and on, you know, look, on another note, you do bring up a good point, right? What if the DOE said we're not gonna release until, we said October first, but we're not gonna release until October third?
That's happened.
Yeah,
It has happened.
Maybe we should punt to the
I
following.
think it
one.
happened last year even.
I don't wanna be in that mess, so what do you think?
But-
Yes, I
Let's punt to the
think
next one?
until- Yeah.
But
But the
the
next
next one's gonna
meeting is
be-
at Hilton Head Library, and library is a smaller,
That's okay. We'll just-
okay,
We'll make it work.
all right.
They can have it
Okay.
out front of the
Yeah.
library.
Good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, that's a good, very good point. Okay.
I don't wanna be in that situation,
Yeah.
because then we will have invited them, they're here, and
Right.
Oh,
Oh,
good.
yeah.
All
I
right.
think you're gonna,
Public comments,
We have
chairman's
great hope.
report. Under committee reports, ad hoc results needs to change the date, we need to change the date on the
Evaluation.
evaluation, because it conflicts with, other matters. So that's what will be the
And, yes,
business there, because normally we wouldn't have the committee report on the first. We're trying, right, to just have it on the second meeting of the month.
is this on board business?
which one?
Are we on board business?
No, we're committee
reports.
reports.
Okay, okay, okay.
Under committee reports. All right,
Superintendent report now.
yeah, now we're down here to your reports.
Okay,
Okay.
school improvement / strategic plan, that really needs to go under board business,
Okay.
Oh, okay.
because remember, we had it,
Well, under board business, Mary gave me the approval of the school renewal plan and the approval of the district plan. So do I move, are they separate, or are they the same thing?
well, I think the only thing we're missing is, she didn't share anything different with me. Well, the only thing we're missing, I think, is the board approval, so we can send it and finish
we
with
saw
April
them
30th
last
of
time.
last year.
Yeah.
Right, we already
We
saw them.
Right, but we just didn't go through the final approval,
We
did we?
couldn't, because it was under superintendent's report, not under
Yeah,
board
board
business.
So she was telling me under the SIP, she wanted to present the law or the legal, something,
This is
About,
Mary.
yes.
about the school improvement plan?
So, okay.
If there's a question around it or something during
Okay.
board business,
Yeah.
we'll ask a question
Okay.
and we'll deal with it.
All right.
We-
So.
So that's off.
Okay. School safety is what we decided your,
Yep.
the things we already talked about.
And then Daniel told me
Yeah,
the report cards are out and
So the-
we'll be out.
so again, it's one of those things, right, it's the intent that, those things that are embargoed are not gonna be, they're gonna be released on October 1st,
Okay, just a minute.
which means that, we would have a presentation. We could have just an overview presentation for the board on what our data is telling us.
But the board wouldn't have it in their board docs ahead of time, would they? Because you wouldn't really be.
No, well, that's true.
See, you wouldn't really be able to.
Now,
He
the
said
other
it was
thing-
going out this week.
What's that?
Daniel said this week, there was going out this week, because I asked him about Thursday or Friday, if you want to ask him.
But I think, I'll check with him, but I think,
We couldn't say anything about it until October 1st.
right, and if we put it out in,
Board
Yeah, I
docs,
don't
yeah,
think
so.
they can,
So-
because it'll
so-
get out information.
okay,
Scratch.
so,
So that could be the next.
Yeah, those
so
are
that could be
meeting.
the next one. And just the only thing, you know, my preference would be for the board, to have the information before, it goes out to everybody else.
Yeah.
But you just know that if it gets on October 1st released, that the world's gonna have it, and you don't have it.
I
at
think
the
you
same
could
time
say
as the
that.
board, or maybe we can send the board something on email, to say, here's kind of what it is, and,
Yeah,
If you don't want it out before October first, I wouldn't send it out.
no. If it comes out on October
Oh,
1st,
yeah.
then I think we could just send an email to the board as soon
Oh,
as
yes.
it's released and said, here
Right.
it is,
Yeah, that
You
would
know
be,
what I mean?
okay. And then have the discussion later.
the next week.
All right, so that's all. So then we won't have any, you don't have the superintendent report,
Maybe school safety.
just school safety,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, just school safety and.
It just,
That's fine.
I thought of last night,
Does the board want, just sort of a briefing on, a listen and learning tour? Or,
I think that would be, yeah.
So we put that under other matters, update on listening and learning tour?
Or would that go under the superintendent's report, under his reports?
It is.
It is, it's the
Other
last
matters is
thing.
under superintendent report. It doesn't
Right.
fit up under the goals, so it would be,
or no?
Well, it do fit under the goals, kind of, I mean, because he's,
well, I mean, but it's under other matters, under the superintendent's report.
okay.
do you have a summary of what you've learned, or not yet because you haven't finished?
Well,
You got 2 this week, right?
3 this week,
3, so you got 1 tonight, don't you?
yeah, tonight,
That's over
tomorrow,
here.
Yeah.
tonight, tomorrow, and Thursday, and that's it.
Okay.
And then we jump into.
I guess
the
that's back to the same issue, I won't have Thursday's information to
Uh-huh.
load into board docs, to
Uh-huh.
pull it all together officially on board, load it into board docs.
Yeah.
That's not-
Maybe you can do that following meeting then.
Yeah, I know, the following meeting is getting really heavy.
Um,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Who's compiling the data, Mr. Foster,
Which day?
from the listening and learning, because you've passed out.
So
I know it's-
Kristen, is
Kristen,
pulling all of that together for me, and then I'm gonna be able to look at it and sort it.
Yeah,
a bunch of
I think
different
you're
ways.
Too early. Okay. All right, so under board business, now, I wasn't certain that these had to be approved by the board.
oh,
Mary said that
Oh.
she found the wording that it does.
That's the
Okay.
statute part she was talking about,
Yeah.
in the superintendent's.
Yeah, and I
report.
wasn't here.
No, that's, I think, why she wanted to put it up here under student achievement, to say, basically, here's the statute,
Okay, but that can go under board business,
but I think
actually.
it can go
Yeah.
on board business at the
yeah.
same
I mean,
time.
on that strategic plan template, that, it says right on there, approved by the board.
Yeah,
And that's,
yeah.
that's was the big brouhaha, is that there was that there was a date in there
Yeah,
from yeah.
April 3rd.
but, since we're talking about where it's placed on the agenda, well, last night, we had the board monthly budget under superintendent's report, and we made a motion and voted on it. I mean, I recognized that as it was occurring, but, in a way, I almost think the agenda should say that, how like we added that we could, that there may be action coming out of executive session.
Mhm. But do you want me to put it further down at,
Well, I think that maybe it should say something to the effect that there may be board action in any of these sections, because we really take it in committee reports, or really,
But, would we, have the,
so I can put under superintendent's report, board action may take place.
but I think that's something that we're gonna change, that, and we're gonna change right, and we need to get the,
well, we're not being consistent already, because the meeting,
right, so.
the
what-
17th, it
but
wasn't
technically-
allowed, and then the
but-
meeting yesterday, it was allowed.
So basically, that was really, that was the officer's fault, that was our fault.
Uh-huh.
That was our boo-boo. because that's something that we should have recognized. So rightfully speaking, it's our fault, so we don't need to, so we're now addressing it, we're not continually doing it. So therefore, if any action is gonna take place, then we need to make sure that it's in the right place from here on out. But I don't think that we should make them find a place where action can be taken, because the reason why this agenda was done this way, so that it's done fair and everyone knows what's coming forward, and that there's no
Surprises.
no surprises. So therefore, I would not be in support of that.
Well, I wanna say something too.
Because I can correct that, just
Okay.
like we do at the work session. On the work session agenda, we consistently say that any action may take place, because the work session agenda is basically set just like this. So that wording is legal to put anywhere, that when we do work sessions, at the bottom, I always put on there, any action may take place based off of,
And honestly, that's why I didn't stop it last night,
So that way
because
you
one, it's
can't.
the board budget, so why should I be stopping, action on the board budget, I mean, it gets into, it's like splitting hairs. And the whole idea of an agenda is to get business done, If we're so focused on the process and the procedure to the nth degree, we'll never achieve excellence. I really don't think that. And I mean, yes, you have to have rules, and you have to, like you said, prevent there being surprises, so the public is aware of what we're discussing, when we're discussing it, at the beginning of the meeting or the end or whatever. But I think in a way that maybe it would be better if people are prepared that there could be a vote other places, because we definitely are doing that under committee reports. I thought it was foolish to go from committee reports, talk about everything, and then put it down on the consent agenda, hours later.
and maybe perhaps we should not put board budget under, because it's not the superintendent's report.
Exactly.
It's not, so we just need to create, because
Yeah, that's what I'm
it's not
thinking.
your
It's not
budget.
his budget.
So it
It's our
doesn't
budget.
really fall under your financial responsibility, because it's not your financial responsibility. So we need to have another place on the agenda for board budget and for board discussion, because it's not the superintendent's.
So maybe it's board action. And
But
then-
it's not always, it doesn't go under action, because when you have under board action, you're saying that you're going to vote, and a lot of times the report is just you all looking at it and
Asking questions.
asking questions, so you're not taking action on it.
So therefore, then if that's the case, then under committee reports, maybe you put something in that block under board business.
Or just add right there to committee, we have been having the motions there.
So I could
Or you
add
could just-
another place and just say board, or board items, or board, because it's not board business action, but it could be.
Board business, because it's.
Yeah, it's board business, but
That's
it's,
board business.
but it's not the action, so we'll just be board
Board
Yeah,
business.
that's good.
Yeah.
That sounds reasonable.
So just add another place after the superintendent's report for board business.
Without the word action?
Correct.
Yeah. And then where are we gonna put a disclaimer that there may be?
I can put it anywhere on the, at the beginning, at the end,
Oh, you
there's,
figure it out.
there's enough places
Yeah,
there.
exactly. But just so people are aware that there can be votes taken, I think that's important.
And maybe at the next meeting, we need to let them know that there's a new spot and what it representative and, or even maybe you need to get a vote to, because I know they're very, some board members are very, you know what, I remember they said that one time that we didn't have the authority to change the template, so we might wanna just check, so I mean, that's, I hear saying that we do, but I just wanted to check with other board members so that we don't have any tension among board members. And I'm trying to prevent that. Keep everybody engaged.
All right, so what are we gonna have under board business? I guess you say board business possible action, that would be really.
Just put board business, because if there's any
It's
action.
board, yeah, it's business, okay.
Do you all have anything that's kind of, I'm only pushing because I know you have to leave.
Yeah, what time do you
like-
have to leave?
Like in 2 minutes.
Okay,
Be there at 6, right?
okay.
Go.
Yeah, 5:30?
Traffic shouldn't be,
Shouldn't be that bad?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You don't have to go back to 12 to really come back? Oh, okay.
I think you already got all these things.
So
from
do you
here.
want any of the things that are on
Yeah,
here
let's
to
see.
go? Because I'm taking the SRO in elementary schools, that's being moved to the October 15th executive session. school,
I'm sorry, October 15th, yeah,
executive session,
yeah.
the school improvement plans follow-up. That was one of the things I didn't know.
Is that do you mean the priority TSI or no?
That came out of the,
Oh, yeah, that was
one of the
last
follow-ups
meeting,
out of the
or 2
last
meetings ago,
meeting.
17,
So,
on the 17th.
But we just had that last night.
so
didn't we?
is this what they were talking about?
I'm thinking, school improvement plans.
Sorry, ask the question again?
So,
Under the
Oh,
follow-up,
on here?
under the follow-up from the 17th meeting, someone was talking about the school improvement plan. I wasn't sure if they were talking about what we did last night.
No, I think what that was about, as a board, a couple of board members were talking about, the SMART goals or that were in or not in some of those plans, okay?
Right.
And then I think somebody requested a follow-up to that, because one of the deals is that those plans are living documents, right? That schools can adjust those plans throughout the year based on, you know, what's happening or where they are, if they're,
mhm.
right? And so one of the things that, with that, one of the things we said was that we were going to work with schools with respect to how they're developing those plans and those SMART goals, because that's just something that obviously we need to get more strategic about.
Right, some of them
You know,
did, so
that they-
this,
so that their plans are more strategic or targeted.
So when's a reasonable time to come back? 2 months, 3 months?
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, we're gonna have to spend a little bit of time with them.
Yeah.
I would think,
I mean,
not
it's
till
not-
after winter map. I
Yeah.
mean, you know.
And when is that?
Oh, it's typically before winter break,
So maybe in January?
but it
we
might be
should-
right after, I mean, there's a window,
Yeah.
it's like all the testing there.
What did the board adopt, though? Didn't one member said that, I remember someone said that we wanted to check and we wanted to keep them coming before us so that we could keep up some, actually, I think someone might have made a motion of that in one of those meetings there. Someone said something about it. So we don't want to keep them too far away. But that we are concerned, that we are checking in with it.
But I
But
think
you're
some
talking
of
about
those
the school
plans,
improvement plan?
or you're talking about the TSI schools.
Yeah, I think you're talking about TSI schools, right?
The ones
Yeah,
last
yeah.
night? Yeah, these are
That's
more.
No,
not-
the one also from the last board meeting too.
Okay, yeah. But you know, the thing with the school improvement plan is that you gotta have your faculty involved in it. And so when some of those plans, it's gonna take some work because, and you know, when you get the faculty involved, you gotta give them time. So, I mean, I would think that second semester, beginning of second semester would probably be time,
Okay.
you know?
So,
Because you gotta give
So
Mary
early 2020.
time to
So maybe
work
January
with some of these
2020.
principals.
Who's Mary?
Dr.
Dr.
Strauss.
Strauss. Time to work with the principals. And some of those plans were good. They were very full of SMART goals, and they had a lot of data, and they really, you know.
Yeah.
And
some
others
of
were
them
very general.
We
Yes.
need to do this, we need to do that,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, you know, those plans, you know, have a purpose and they are important, right? But at the same time, in the work that Dr. Stratos is going to be doing and engaging in, right? Changing the language on that isn't gonna make necessarily the difference in moving the achievement forward, but getting in the classroom or getting in there and doing this other work, so it's gonna be much more effective in terms of moving achievement forward.
Yeah.
Not that that shouldn't be attended to, but there's another priority that it's gonna be a bigger piece, so the time, so as we can address it and have the shift and the change is important, right? In order to get it done, I think.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I do,
Like
I
that-
do.
That other work, rolling
Yeah.
up your sleeves and
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
what's gonna move the needle, not changing the language, you know? But,
All right, a good thing for this meeting would be the impact fees. I finally could get an
Okay.
update on that, because it's been months since
It
we've
has
had an
been.
update, and that would be under fiscal responsibility of the superintendent's report, right? And unlikely any vote, I think,
okay,
the impact fees. 'Cause-
just informational?
Yep,
Where we
Where we
stand on that
stand
study.
yeah, where we stand and.
The county paid for
Okay.
part of it, we
and
paid for part of it.
Yeah. think we
I don't
paid
know if it's
100
done
grand. Yeah, I don't think it is from what she said,
but kind of an update on that.
yeah. Do you know if it's done? Don't.
I do, just timing,
Yeah, I hear you.
you know, there's other stuff coming.
Also, so far, just to recap, so we can kind of wrap this up. Under the superintendent reports, what other reports do we have?
Well, that's what I'm just making a recommendation that we add, since we've taken away quite a bit from the superintendent's report, let's add the impact fees, at least an update on it,
Okay.
for where we are with it, under, and that would be under fiscal responsibility. And Tanya has given an update, but as I wanna say, has it been while you guys have been on here? I think it's been a
I
good
think she's
6
answered
months.
some questions,
And-
but not necessarily, and we might find, I mean, I don't know, if it's not done yet, there's not probably gonna be a whole lot she can say about it.
And also, how about, also could we get him to bring us a, under the superintendent's report about how, what's the district policy about, accepting donations?
The reason that came up is
Yeah.
because one board don't feel that instead of the donation going to the school, it should come to the district. And they want, that's what he was talking about.
But I think well, people sometimes wanna donate money to a
Right.
particular school,
Right.
right? You know, and
Yeah, well, we
they
can't
don't
have a meeting about
wanna,
that right now.
What?
We
Yeah.
have a meeting about it, yeah.
Yeah, that,
Yeah, you can't just get into the discussion.
Oh,
Yeah, we just have to basically.
well, that must be so hard.
Yeah,
Oh my
it is,
God.
but that's the,
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately.
so is the,
But I do agree with what you said,
The-
exactly where you're going at with it.
no, I mean, my comment back would be, you can't look the gift horse in the mouth. I mean, where the person wants to give the money is where the person wants to give the money.
So that's what I told the person.
Oh, you can open it up?
So the other thing now, so what, who's the policy? I mean, there's,
It comes through finance, so.
but that's not a board policy.
We do
That's
have,
the
there
board.
is, there is a
There's
policy,
a policy that's.
there is a
dealing with
policy,
donations.
they have to deal with donations
Right.
and how it comes, and there's a form that they have
And
to
the things
sign.
we look at with John this summer?
It's an AR, not a
That's what I
policy,
meant.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
All right,
It's a,
there you go.
it's an
not a
AR,
policy.
it's not a policy, but there is a regulation and there's a form that they have to fill out, and you sign it after
Right.
the board has voted to accept the donation, then I get that form that you all see in there. When they present a donation, they have to fill out that form and go through, the finance thing, so Tanya can bring an update and say, this is what we do, how they have to do
Yeah, that's
it,
fine.
and
And I
so
think I
forth.
signed for 5,000 or more.
You have to sign for 5,000 and above,
And that also has to be board action.
correct, and that's why they have to bring it to the board for approval.
Yeah, that's
so what are they looking for, clarification on what the AR is on donation?
Probably.
No, basically what the person was saying that because you donate to one school, that school could get a lot more money than the rest of the schools. And they were saying maybe it should be, come to the district and you distribute it to each school, but you can't stop a person from donating to a school.
You can't, but you can, but I mean.
I think it's the philosophy.
I mean, but no, you can, but you can't. Because technically speaking, if it was the board policy, then that's law. Same way how they want to do with those, clear bag policy. Once that's in there, that's law. So you can't, but you can. I mean, it was it would be to our, how about some of our schools that we didn't go to that policy, but hey, I remember.
Do we want it on this agenda?
Well, it doesn't look like this agenda
Yeah.
is as stacked as other ones.
She could just give an update on what the policy says.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that form.
And that,
Yeah.
okay.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
that's.
The donations, they,
Yeah.
So that's gonna be under fiscal responsibility too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
When do we have the teacher forum come?
They're coming,
She's asked them.
they're coming to October 15th in, our second meeting in October.
Okay.
Now, upon actually getting these groups to come, the board officers need to be looking and seeing who we have coming so that we don't have a stacked agenda, because right now we do have a task at hand, and that's why I'm asking all this information to make sure that our meetings aren't as long, because we will change the mechanism, all of us to make sure these mechanisms are working. then we need to make sure that we have the handle on everything that's going on, and that's gonna take place within the spectrum of our meetings, so that we can get that.
So I'm not quite understanding, I hear you, but what's your point?
And if we're inviting the teachers, and then we're inviting this group, we're inviting that group, and then like a couple of big items that for this meeting, we've taken off, we put them on the next meeting. We don't wanna keep lagging them and having large, because it's a hit or miss, so that we can have consistency and timing.
Well, just as a reminder, the teacher forum is now called something else, PAC, is our.
Right.
They come quarterly.
Quarterly,
Right.
and it was typically the second meeting of the month, and I
Okay.
believe it was supposed to be September,
Right.
but with, starting school and hurricane, that's why we decided it would be better to have it in October. So Robert
Right,
reached out to them.
and I hear that, but we made up that meeting that they were at,
Yeah,
and we could have invited them because apparently the information that they had was already done, so that then they could have been invited to one of these meetings right here. That's what I'm saying. So that once again we're controlling the calendar, and we're not allowing our meetings to go longer. We're not allowing a lot of things to get backed up on it.
Mr. Smith,
That's my point.
Mr. Smith, our meeting will not go longer because of who we invite. Those, please listen to me.
That's your opinion, Mr. Campbell, as an officer.
Mr. Smith,
That's
you have to let
Please listen to what I'm
Mr.
saying.
Campbell
Go ahead,
speak.
let Mr. Campbell.
Please,
Go ahead.
okay?
Go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
Our meeting lasts long because board members sit up and ask questions over and over. Just like last night. You know how many times we talked about the calendar, talked about days and all? That's what caused our meeting to go long. It's not how many people come to the meeting.
They have presentations, their presentations. That's a group that does presentation. That's my point.
All right, so we're gonna have the impact fees, the donations, the AR, and then I don't know what the demographic audit of the district is, what that's, that means.
Williams.
That's something that I will be doing. That I will send an email out, and actually that night will probably not
That's not a good, night.
I mean, I guess that is a light night, huh?
But they have to
Can that be a
prepare.
work session?
Yeah, no,
It can be a work session?
No, we didn't do that at the board meeting. I don't see why it can be at the board meeting.
And when you say of the district, are you talking about employees or students, or what do you?
I email it and I put everything in there.
Okay.
We can, yeah,
Alright.
yeah.
So the 90-day validation plan is in the, separate, and obviously the meeting delegation, obviously cannot be during this meeting,
No.
a few days, yeah, okay.
At least several months from now, we can set up a date where we can sit down and talk with the whole delegation.
I think that's a great idea, I know we've tried to
Yeah, we
get
did it
them
once.
here, I remember, but they bowed out at the kind of the last minute, like two of them sort of committed, and.
What could we possibly get a letter started on that? Could we possibly get a letter started on that?
So we can talk about other meetings, so that might be good for the work session.
Okay, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
Are they invited to the school
yes.
State of the Union?
Yes,
They are.
Okay.
Yes, they
And are
are.
they invited to the teacher forum, the Teacher of the Year breakfast on Friday?
I'm not sure if they're invited to the teacher, but communications also has a legislation breakfast that comes out of there, so they're invited to that. That only one or two always only shows up. Tom Davis will show up.
Yeah.
But
Good idea.
they're invited to come and to that, and the turnout is pretty.
But they go back in session in January, so the likelihood of this happening, I mean,
It's
it would
better
be
now.
higher if it was
Right.
now.
Right, and so that's why I said someone, maybe we can go ahead and get, maybe this, the secretary of the board to start the letter or something, so, or unless that's something that, if your committee, if you wanna do
Well,
that.
I can do it, this is not a problem.
And then maybe you can just bring it, you can, show email to everyone that we can go from there and have it sent out the same way how we had a letter sent off last time. I forgot, was it you that sent out, wanted to send off a letter or something? I forgot what it
Well,
was.
the board sent the one about the starting this, and then I sent a couple individual emails.
Right.
But
We can
But
do
you
an
can't
invitation.
do board business via the email, I mean, you can have
Right.
like
No, I'm
Colonel
saying-
Dyer did, where he
Right.
and Tanya worked on the letter, he sent it out as a draft.
Right, that's what I'm
Then it
saying,
was
right.
back in open session that
Right, and then we vote on it.
voted on it
Right,
and
yeah,
did the
yeah,
final.
Right, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that's what
That's-
Kathy Robine did
Right,
for
yeah,
the
Right,
start
yeah, so
date.
that's exactly what I'm saying, we can go ahead and get that done. Right, so that we can go ahead and get this actually happening.
We can find, contact Cindy to find out dates of what they
Yeah.
have available and stuff.
Okay. So
The
consent,
Busby Island visit, what is that?
I think,
To have
I
a
think it was-
meeting or
no,
over
just
there?
to have board members visit out there, it didn't seem
That
like
was
it
a
was
request
really.
from yesterday?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
I don't
think
think it
that's
was
all
to
it
have
was,
a
yeah.
discussion about it, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
So under the consent agenda, remember, we have now minutes from 2017 that were
Oh,
not
that you-
approved or
Okay, so I
from
put the
here.
ones that joined.
Yeah,
It was
'cause I
the work
did-
session, it was the August work session,
From what year? Was it?
2017.
So what have they done in the past? Because it's good, I mean, either board members have to watch the video, or those of us that were on the board then, I mean, it's hard to remember something 2 years ago, what the outcome was. Or the other option would be that we vote and say, we're not gonna approve them, post them as draft,
They can,
but
and that's what they've done in the past.
it's just post them as
They've
draft.
done both ways.
Okay.
Well, I'm
Let's have a discussion.
what are we talking about?
So there are meeting minutes from
August
2
16th
years
and
ago that were
17th,
never approved.
they were draft.
They were draft,
And
so they never got approval. So we either have to say that's the way they stay and they're posted as draft, or we say we're going to review them and to the best of our abilities, i.e. I would think that would entail watching the meeting, or at least parts of it, and say that we're gonna vote, you know, that even though you weren't necessarily on the board then, and you could decide whether you're gonna vote yes, no, or abstain, I guess.
Gotcha.
And there's only 4 of us that would have been on that. Yeah.
Well, I don't see why we just can't put it on that right there and come in with that executive session, executive session matter. You know, we come in and look at that portion of it, because it should only be maybe 20, 30-minute portion, and look
Why
at
would you think that would be executive session?
because we can watch it out there. I mean, I'm just saying,
It's already on the web, you can
No,
go to the website, it's already public.
but if we watch it all at one time, then everyone can sit together. Then you
Well, it's
can't.
gonna take hours.
It's a 2-day meeting. So
While we put it on the agenda.
Actually, that-
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was about basically about maybe one motion, or I guess it's more than that. So I would have to.
It's approving the whole minutes.
It's
The
approval
meeting
of the minutes of the
Okay.
2-day work session minutes.
Okay.
And they're in
okay.
draft form, and there's only currently 4 board members who were here in 2017. So those board members can vote and say, yes, we approve them, or they can stay on the website in draft form.
Yeah, we stay on that address.
But
But
you have board members
Yeah,
who
but
went with it.
once
so-
again, that is a
So-
11-body board decision.
So,
So that's why it's on the agenda,
Right.
and
So-
people can decide if they
so
want.
maybe that should be the
Yeah,
last
yeah.
one.
I'll put that on there, okay.
Okay. All right, I think that's, any other questions, comments for October 1st? Okay. Motion to adjourn, Mr. Smith?
So moved.
I second. Unanimous.
Robin,
Yes,
that